Thank you very much, fellow Africans, and welcome to today's episode of the Change for African campaign. And so, fellow Africans, being on Friday, it's all about our fifth pillar of the Change for African campaign, where we focus on matters to do with the climate change that we face as an African continent. And so, fellow Africans, this Friday being our 85th episode of the Change for African campaign, the very thing to help us exemplify today's episode, I'll be using the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal number 15.1, whereby I'm focusing on this key target that is all about that by 2020, they should ensure that the conservation, restoration, and sustainable use of terrestrial and land freshwater ecosystems and their services, in particular forests, wetlands, mountains, and dry lands, in line with the obligations under international agreements. The conservation, restoration, sustainable use of these things. And I showed it's all about protecting and sustainably use forests, wetlands, and land ecosystems. The sustainable use of them, and we should also be protecting them. Now that's a global. It's in the global perspective that way. But then we are now bringing this into a very confined way, that we're speaking this in the African context, whereby that now we'll be using the African statistics to help us exemplify this, because we are Africans and Africa is our business. And remember, some of the things that this target is highlighting, these are things that that if we really focus about having a developed Africa or having a great Africa, these are things that are going even to help us when it comes to the even economic development of Africa. Because speaking about the land restoration and conservation, these are live issues that if you focus on them and we be able to work on those areas or around those areas, then it's going to be part of the fuel that is going to fuel our economy to have a robust economy as the continent of Africa. So these are very critical areas, and just a few talk about this, that Africa loses over 3.9 million hectares of forest annually, and that is according to the to FAO. It's a world organization, meaning that there's still that people are yet to be civilized enough to be able to understand that we need to take care of this ecosystem, because these are some of the things that are, even as we look at having a developed Africa, these are part of the things that we need to be to be considering, so as to have a great Africa. And wetlands and dry lands are being degraded due to climate change, farming pressure, and deforestation. That is why we have something what we call the sustainable part of it, that we should protect and sustainably use forests. That even as we use the forest in one way or the other, it should be sustainable in a way that if it's doing or cutting trees or doing whatever it is, or even clearing ways for farming, then we should have an alternative or sustainably do this. We can even do the same, as we do farming at the same time, we also do the trees at the same time, or also be part of the protecting the ecosystem, such that the geographical norms of that area are not invaded just because people want to do farming. So these are some of the areas that we need to look up to, and these are areas all about climate. And remember, we'll be commemorating our United Nations our UNEP Day on 5th of June, some days from now. So this year it's all about beating plastic pollution. So these are also interconnected in a way that since matters concerning climate, these are also opportunities that can be, we can create opportunities from such areas that can be able to steer up things to do with employment opportunities for the young people of Africa, because these are areas that if they are well invested in, then they are going to have some positive impact to our economy and also to the living standards of the people of Africa. Remember, we discuss living standards every Thursday, so this is also another way on which you can take that step. Yes, these things are there to be used, but sustainably, they should be used sustainably in a way that they do not later, being used, that doesn't mean that you have to interfere with the ecosystem or to interfere with the climate or to interfere with the environment. No, need to be sustainably used, meaning we need to be at the same time we protect them, but also sustainably use them, so as for the betterment of the current generation and also for the future generation. Remember, climate change, Africa is the most heat continent. So when we continue to say that we need to use things, yes, but then how are we using these things? Though many of the reasons as why Africa is the most heat continent when it comes to the matter of climate change, it's not really related to the problem that Africa themselves are doing, but then it's actually something that sometimes we all know Africa is not that industrialized. So some of these things are because the global, the other parts of the global are actually more industrialized, so it can also lead to that. That is another thing. But then, what are we doing within our own system to be able to make sure that though this is true, that Africa is the most heat continent, then what are we doing ourselves to be able to protect our own ecosystems, so that we can, as we also go to it, because we are now, Africa is growing and Africa has a very greater future. As we now plan about industrialization, what are we doing that will be able to sustain us, as we go into the future, in terms of now when you get to being an industrial continent? Because now industrialization comes with will we have fully, or are we moving into that direction fully, using renewable energy instead of non-renewable energy to do our industrialization? You cannot industrialize without energy. Now we'll be using energy then. So will that be another problem, adding to the current problems about what we are doing around the areas of our ecosystems and our forests, the traditional and inland fresh waters? These are very critical things. Speaking about inland fresh water, that is the water that people use for consumption actually. So we need to protect such sources of water. We need to be very conscious about that key target number 15.1. Remember, the goal itself is all about life on land. How is life on land? We need to protect the life on land, especially since we are Africans and Africa is our business, so we discuss Africa. So fellow Africans, allow me to end at that point. That was episode number 85. We have 15 to go. So let's meet on Monday as we discuss about our 86th episode. On Monday, it's all about governance, that the governance, systems in Africa, and how governance is letting Africa down. Thank you and have a great time. Thank you.